Parashat Vayeshev Tafshin Peva. Let's go directly into the psukim. She's going to take one side of the Mechiras Yosef and explain it. Since it's a very deep Indian, I'm going to try to give a share today, like almost say a story. And I think it's going to be more digestible. Vayhi kasher ba Yosef elecha. And when Yosef arrived to his brother, Vayavshitu es Yosef es kutontoi, they removed his shirt, es kesoines apasim asher alav. You can see the difficulty without even me pointing it out in the pasuk. You should have said from the beginning, if that's what's important, is the kesoines apasim, so you should have said, Vayavshitu es kesoines apasim asher alav. But not Vayavshitu es Yosef. What did you remove from Yosef? But I'm not gonna go into this. Vayikachuhu vayashlichu oisoi haboira. They took him, they threw him in the bird. Pay attention. And I'm still not gonna go into this. Haboira is feminine. Haboir is masculine. Vehaboirek and boimain. Chazal learn there was no water in the pit, in the well, but there was nechashim v'akrabim. Okay. In the boir. So what was in the boira? Because he was thrown in the boira, not in the boir. So what was there? What do I care what's in the boir? There's nechashim and akrabim. What is the pasuk? What is the pasuk trying to tell me here, to hint me? And you want to say vehaboirek, if you talk about the same one, you don't have to repeat vehaboirek. You don't have to tell me it's empty. Tell me there's no water. And I know. I'll make the same diuk. Vayeshvu lechol lechem. They sat down to make a suda. It used to be the habit of the Sanhedrin. If they were mechayev someone to show that the Shekhinah was with them, to associate the Shekhinah, that they didn't have any bias in the din, they would make a suda. Vayisu eneihem vayiru. Oh. You can say vayiru, right? Vayisu eneihem. They raised their eyes. Because don't we know that if they saw, you have to raise your eyes to see. So what's the point? Vayisu eneihem vayiru. Vehine orchas ishmeelim ba'a migilad. They carried a sign on them, they were nomads, and they carried a sign. By the way, guys, you have to know we come from Gilad. But isn't the place Gilad where Hara Gilad, where just Lavan, a few years back, Lavan and Yaakov made that mount that they had a covenant between them. Gilad, again this Gilad. Yaakov goes from there, meets Esav, goes to Sukkos. Now, and then Shechem, the Ishmaelim, they come from there. Why? What's the connection? I won't be able to arrive there, but Ugmalehem noisim, and the camels, because instead you might think the Ishmaelim had the camels empty and they were carrying on their back the law. Ugmalehem noisim, nechois utsri valoid. Rashi explained perfumes usually they carried asphalt, tar, things that smell bad. But for the tzaddik, this time HaKadosh Baruch Hu made a miracle, and they carried good stuff. Interesting. When Yaakov is going to send a present, not knowing it's Yosef, he's going to send Nechois Utzri Valod. So it's not here to tell me just nothing. Yaakov is going to send the same thing when the second time they're going to go down, the brothers, in order to fetch food, he's going to give them Nechois Utzri Valod. Hoilchim lehoirid mitzrayma. Whoa. Hoilchim mitzrayma. What's lehoirid? Yeah, they're not going to keep it on the camels. I know that. They're going to lower the schoira and try to sell it. That's the whole purpose of these nomads, businessmen. The psukim here are loaded. Vayomer Yehuda elechav. Yehuda has a change of heart. They did it in Torah. Mabetza kinaro egesachinu. Why should we kill him? Vechisinu es damo, and we have to hide his blood. Lechu venimkerenu laishmaelim. Let's sell him to the Arabs. V'yadenu al tehiboy, and our hands should not be on him. Ki achinu besarenu hu vayishmeu echad. This pasuk, if anyone has a little bit of brain between his shoulders, he should be jumping. Yehuda, number one, you were on a din Torah. You are the Avbezdin. You want to tell me now that you're going to renege the din Torah because you have some emotional philosophy right now? So you can feel not to kill him that he's your brother and your flesh, but you cannot feel that he's your brother and your flesh, and you should not sell him. Have you thought an instant, Yehuda, about the father, your father? You're going to come in Vayigash and drives us up the walls with how many times you're going to repeat Venafsho Keshura Benafsho, that they were attached to each other, and so forth. But here, no. For your father, nothing. The din only taking into account Yosef, but you're not in a din anymore. You want to have a kind of, I don't know how I would call it, but a pshara, that we don't do the din, but we sell him. I mean, isn't it better for a Jew? It's the story of the Charba Kadisha. To die through the sword of the Sanhedrin, because then he expiates all his avoinos and he goes directly to Olam Haba. Here you're doing the opposite. You're going to expose him to a life of potential sin. What are you doing here? What kind of a cheshbon? Always the philosophy of weakness always leads to more drama. We think we're fixing something. We're not fixing anything. You created a bigger problem. Now, he's going to have to be alone in a land unknown to him. And with morals, we all know, the Midrash Tanchuma tells us when in Parashat Lech Lecha, when Paro told Avram after the story the next day when he returned Sarah, take your wife and leave. Why take your wife and leave? Because Paro said, I cannot be responsible for the Egyptians. Their morals are so low that you are in danger. So please take your wife and leave. And that's where those Ishmaelim that the Pasuk told you before that they're going to Egypt, that's where you're sending your brother. I want to go a little bit, take it back a little bit, and explain the real problem behind it. We have 12 months of the year, 12 mazalas. Each month has a different siruf had to write the Yud Kevah. You're going to lose one of the shifteka. One of the shvatim, they decided to make it disappear. And who's going to replace it during that? That's not. Up there also in Shamayim, how can the world keep on? It's impossible. But Yehuda is not regarding us. He came to Yosef, Hamalach timlach aleinu, the mlucha is mine. You're saying you're going to be the melech? Yehuda. I said before you're the Av-Basin, right? And you judged on the melucha, but you know Gebatava. You are biased. You're not allowed to sit down. How can it be a din Torah? It's a farce. But it cannot be because the Midrash Tanchuma here tells us that since there were only 9, Reuven went back to serve his father that day, so there were only 9. So they associated HaKadosh Baruch Hu with them to be 10. Because a din like this requires at least 10. To make a cherem, they need 10. But I don't get it. HaKadosh Baruch Hu associates himself in a din that cannot be a din Torah. Because Yosef will be judged on many things that at least Yehuda, if not more brothers, are negei abadava, and they cannot be judges. Bnei Israel are recognized by 3 midas: by Shonim, Rachmanim, Goim Lechasad. If you tell me that the brothers sat in a din Torah, I understand. But since we proved it could not be a din Torah, then I don't understand. How were you so cruel? Where does a cruelty like this, the midas of Esau, I'm not even sure that Esau would behave like this. Where did they come out with midas like this? Oh, HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided that during Bris Ben Abesarim, that's the way it's going to have to be. Then I'm going to ask a question again. Why Bnei Israel have to go down to Mitzrayim through such a cruel act? Such pain. Why? Kadosh Baruch Hu cannot do things Chaz v'shalom, Hayad Hashem Tiktzar. Is he short of ideas, of possibilities? Nothing is short before HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So what make it in a smoother way? Why did he have to be in such a drama that's going to cost us through ages? That's the true question we need to answer in order to go down and understand Mechiras. I would like to start directly with the pasuk, and I wrote it there. So let's go back to the pasuk. When Yaakov sent Yosef to go see his brothers, the pasuk says, "Vayishlachehu," he sent him me'emek Hebron, from the valley of Hebron. The Gemara asks, and the whole Rashi is based on that Gemara. Hebron is a mount. It's a little mountain. Har Hebron. How can the pasuk say me'emek here? And he brings Rayas also the Gemara from Shimshon and all this. So, but the point being that the pasuk is inaccurate. Hebron is a city on a mountain, not a city in a valley. So why did he send him from, what is this valley of Hebron? So the Gemara answers that it's, what is emek? Emek means profound. The profound idea of the one who resides, who lays in Hebron. It was the idea of Avraham Avinu. Okay. And that's what is taken. Avraham Avinu was the architect of all this. That's a little bit of a surprise. But so we don't get the wrong idea, and that's why I wanted to start with this. If you take the word emek, I'm going to explain it a different way. If you take emek equals 210, equals 10 times K. The name in the Bina, the Bina is in full action mode here. And if you take Hebron, the way it's written in the pasuk, equals 260 equals 10 times Yud K Vav K. The Chochmah and Bina are behind what's going on, what's going to be taking place from that moment that Yaakov sent him and what's going to happen to Yosef. They're both in charge. Now take these two words together. Equals 470. Equals Yehi Oyer Vayehi Oyer. Is there something I'm missing here? Because apparently it's a good news. Something great is going to happen. We're talking about Oyer. We're not talking about darkness. I mean, I could break it down even deeper. show you Rachel and the Charlotte. You know what? It's enough here just to have a good idea. Equals Yosef Shin Dalet Yud. The name Shakai is in the Yesod. Yosef is the Yesod. We see a full circle here that Avraham Avinu chose Yosef. On Shabbos, I'm going to show that Yosef offered himself to Avraham Avinu, not the opposite way. So Yosef knew the mission. And but we see that what we described before and had so many questions about it may not be 100% correct. Because we're talking about Avraham Avinu's complete chesed. We're talking about Chochmah and Bina, only chasadim. The oir is there. So I really don't understand. How can such cruelty take place? You know, when he begged them to let him get out of the boir. I'm going to add one more question before we dive in this year. How old were Shimon and Levi when they killed all Shechem? All the people of Shechem. They were 13. How old was Yehuda then? 11. What's not described in the Torah is described at length in the Yalkut Shimoni, how the nation around Shechem came up on them at war. And the Gvura of Yehuda, 11 years old. Yosef, which has the same strength as Yehuda, the same. We see it in Vayigash. He's 17 years old. Menashe, when Shimon is going to approach Yosef, is going to punch him and knock him off. And Shimon's going to say that this strength only comes from base Abba, from our house. This is not a natural strength. This is a supernatural strength. That was Menashe. You want to tell me why Yosef didn't run away? Why didn't he get out of the pit? Get out from the boiler and go home, run. This is amazing. If we were talking and he had no way out, because we take everything for granted in a story. We're taking for granted that, you know what, he was in the boiler, he was crying, and he was begging them, please let me out and everything. Well, before you blame them not taking you out, I want to blame you. Why didn't you take yourself out? You were able, one jump, poof, you were outside the boiler. So when did you go out? What was your problem, Yosef? One more thing I want to add here. So we have the whole circle. You can hold the rail all through the shear. It's going to be Kur Habaz. Where is Yosef going to take the Bnei Israel? Sorry. To the Kur Barzel. Oh, okay, I'm not doing anymore. Okay, next time. Okay, to the Kura Barzel. So we have here in that sentence, the whole idea in these two words, the whole idea of what's being prepared by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which Avram agreed for. and Yosef. So why did they have to do it that way? The Galia Raza, the Talmud of Dari HaKadosh, has a tremendous arichos on explaining the Inyan, and comes up from an angle. He's not going to give you one proof, but you may think it's a theory, but I'm going to prove every word he said. HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Avraham Avinu in Bris Beis Absarim, everything that happened, that will happen, is written in the Torah. Even the Maaseh with Yaakov and Lavan, which if I have time, I'm going to explain it, that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu separated the Bnei Yisrael through the Bris Milah, what was the purpose of the Bris Milah? Yes, we know it's to remove the Olah, but what's the purpose? The purpose is when the Yesod is exposed, someone may sin, yes. You sin, you pay. But in the same token, the fact you say you pay, automatically you completed, or you paid back your debt. Then what? Then they have Olam Haba. In other words, the whole inyan of the Bris Milah is in order to have the Bnei Yisrael give away for them to receive a oynesh for the sin. So it's only for a short period of time, and then they have Olam Haba. Says the Galia Raza, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu spoke to Avram, you always have those clippers, the Sitra Afra, always listening, trying to listen what HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Avram the secret. So right away they approached HaKadosh Baruch Hu, they told him, what about us? Aren't we the children of Avram also? HaKadosh Baruch Hu faced them and told them, Bnei Yisrael, when they saw that Avram, their father, grandfather, and ancestor agreed to jump in the Kivshan Ha'esh, in the furnace, rather than to bow down to the Avodah Zarah, they took this to heart. And they started behaving that way. Through generations, Jews are going to give their life up. Like in the time of the Inquisition, when complete families used to come besimcha with singing on the Dafe to give their life back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but not to sing. These are Bnei Avraham. It says by you. Did you learn something from this? Them, they learned, so I can give them something more. They're going to be punished, but they're going to have Olam Haba. But you, it's not going to help. You're a kli with a bottomless kli. There's nothing that can stay there. Get out of my face, told them HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So at that point, the Yetzer Hara told HaKadosh Baruch Hu, please, at least let me have some connection with Yaakov Avinu. He says, look, these are my daughters. Exactly the words that Lavan said are the words that the Psalm said to HaKadosh Baruch Hu up there. These are my daughters. These are my children. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu asked him, how come? How are they your children? How are they your daughters? How are they all this? He says, look, if I'm not the one creating envy, tempting a man to a woman and vice versa, there would be no children in the world. HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him, you're a disgusting individual. Only you can lower yourself, talk about things like this. Get out of my sight. And therefore, Hashem said in the Pasuk, just for that, that someone who doesn't have a bris milah cannot enter the nation of Israel. And if he's a Jew, v'nichresa hanefesh ha'imei. HaKadosh Baruch Hu made at that point a din that it's either Ola, either bris milah. And then we see that Lavan, it's a pity, I don't have time, I see that I'm rushing, called it Yegar Sahadusa. Why did he call it? And the Torah is going to record this. He called it in Aramaic. And Yaakov Avinu called it Gal-E. Oh, what a coincidence again. We on Har Gilad, he calls it Gal-E. The other guy called it Yekar Sahadusa. And no, nothing happens. Everybody's fine with the psukim. Everyone understands. And now we have our Ishmaelim coming from Gilad. Gal-E, Gilad, Yegar Sahadusa. Are they coming from the same Maaseh of Lavan and Yaakov? I just want to go quick on this. Because Shabbos, I'm going to dig more, and it's not fair for this year not to have an understanding how this whole thing happened. Yegar Sahadusa. Equals 929. Equals Machloikes Elohim Achiv. Lavan wanted to have, he couldn't let go of Yaakov Avinu. He needed a connection. Making that connection had to be at any cost, because he saw that his witchcrafting, his lechashim, his spell didn't work on Yaakov Avinu. So he had to inject a different poison, the poison of Nachash, to create the machloikes. And then, because once a person is in the machloikes, he can't see straight anymore. What he thinks is, this is das Torah. If he would ask out, he would know he is in Elohim Acher. The true instigator of what and how happens Mechiras Yosef is Laban. And I'll show you a different angle. If you take Yaakov, so just now that we are in Yosef, I have to mention again the Yonasan ben Uziel, that Yosef was conceived by Leah. He was already a fetus before he went to Rachel, and Dinah was conceived by Rachel. And then they were exchanged. In other words, we have two children that have two mothers, Leah and Rachel. If we take Yaakov, Leah, Rachel, Yosef, his father and his mother's, equals 612. Equals bliss. Oh, now we started seeing a connection between the influence of Lavan onto Yaakov Avinu. In other words, he kept a hand on Yaakov Avinu, and with that, he threw his poison on who? On Yosef. Now, that said, let's keep on. You're going to see, Doc, and I don't know if Menachem is here, but what we've learned on Monday night comes to fruition right now. HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided after what the Satan said that it's either the Ola, either the Miga. But these two words now antagonize each other and they're at war. If we take the Ola, I'm going to go quick again on this because Ola in full is Ayin, Resh, Allah, Lamed, Hey, equals 729 equals Kra Sab. Who's in the Allah? Always the Sab. There's only one way. The shame, the second shame in Ana Bechoyach, there's only one way to shut him up and get him on his way. Is that shame, as we learned in the Oitzres Chaim, this is the shame that Moshe Rabbeinu used when the Satan was mekatreg on the Bnei Yisrael when they were about to cross the Yam. Whenever someone is taken, he can think, and he knows what he wants to do is not the proper thing. At that point, he has to think of his name. And this will unchain him from the chains of the Satan, and he will have back his free will. That's the only way to take him down, because it's either the Allah or the me. I'm going to go a little bit deeper now. But again, I told you the way I'm going to say the share more like a story type, because it's really, they are really deep inyanim in here, and I'd rather give them to you in an easy, understandable manner. The Galia Raza, again, I followed on this one. I followed what even though they were talking, I think a lot of people don't understand what he said, and but it's very clear when we take the lashon of the apostle, as we're gonna do now. What was the problem with Lavan? I need to understand. Okay, yes, we have a nice gematria, Yegar Sahadusa, yes. It's machlokes Elohim acherim. But I would like to understand how he affected Yosef. I don't swallow hooks and baits. I need to understand. He says like this. And it's amazing that, I mean, myself, I'm talking for myself right now. I didn't pay attention to the details he's going to show, and they're so obvious in the apostle. 3 times Lavan is going to change language, talking about the mount of stones. He's going to call him Gal. He's going to call him Matseva. 3 times he's going to change. Says the Gal Yeraza. Aid, he's going to say, Aid Hagal Hazeh. That this man should be a witness. Who? Says the Gal Yeraza. Yosef. Ve'eda hamatseva hazois. But you just said it's a gal. Now you call him matseva? Yeah, he has a whole cheshbon. Laban was not stupid. So ve'eda hamatseva hazois. And this matseva should be an aid. Who is this? I thought we only had one aid. It's a mouth. No, there's 2 aiding. Dina. Look at the chokhmah of Lavan. He knew that the strongest of all the Shvatim were the one that were conceived by 2 mothers. And he took both of them and attached them to the God. Eida Amatseva Azos, Ve'eida Galaze. Now make them, they are going to be the witnesses. What happens to Yaakov when he gets to Shem? Dina? Where? In Shem. What happens to Yosef when he gets to Shem? Yosef? Mechirat Yosef. And who's going to help? And who's going to help take them away? The Ishmaelim that come from where? From this Gal Eid. Eid Agal. They're taking the witness because that's the deal. Now in front of our eyes, we have Avraham with Emek Chevron. We had HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now we have Lavan. Does it mean that the cruelty comes from the side of Lavan? But from the side of Yaakov, it would not be, we would have not had that cruelty? So we have 2 terms for this man. Gal and Matseva. We had 2 people that got punished. Dina and Yosef. How? Can we connect the names and can we connect everything? Let's try. Gal plus Matseva equals 170. Equals 2 times 85. Mila, Mila. What happened to Dina? She got raped. What happened to Yosef? He's going to be tested on the Mila. Now we went deeper, where did Laban attach the oynesh, the punishment? If they would cross le'ra'ah, for bad, le'ra'ah, but they didn't cross it, right? They didn't cross it. So why would Dinah be punished? The deal is, and we all understood the deal. The deal is, if the Yaakov or his children are going to be crossing that area like Bilam did, Bilam reneged the covenant, but not Yaakov. So why is Yaakov punished? Bilam added a word. Le-ra-ah. Change order of the letters. He connected or la. Le-ra-ah or la. Yaakov Avinu did not realize that he was making a forbidden covenant with Laban. Laban that time tricked Yaakov Avinu. Now, for the first time in 22 years, he had the hand, and he could be miserable even to his grandchildren as long as it's to Jews. He was not regarding that he was his blood, the children of his daughters, nothing. He wanted the Olah, which is the female of the Satan, to have a hand at them and make them suffer. But we said HaKadosh Baruch Hu was there in the Mechirat Yosef. So why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu protect Yaakov Avinu? Yaakov Avinu was a tamim. He didn't try to be a chacham all along. So what's going on? HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Lavan, you're planning something. I'm planning something. Let's see the words of who. Whose words are going to stand? That's exactly a translation in the Midrash Rabbah, Pedalet Yedalet, but seemingly there's no pshat. But according to what we say, it's very simple to explain it. We take Yosef, we take Dinah. Together is 225. 225 equals 5 times Geula. They're going to be altogether 5 Galuyas. And because of Yosef and Dinah, in every one of them, you wanted to bury them because you thought they will never have the strength to overcome that. Look at how HaKadosh Baruch Hu anticipated everything. Lavan you Shechem. Shechem ben Chamor. Oh, it's called Chamor for nothing. No, yeah. People call themselves Chamor. The Torah doesn't want to hint anything that he is from Klippas Chamor. For sure he is. In order to defile Dinah, the only daughter that Yaakov has. And she is the one that's supposed to provide the wife to Yosef. And Yosef that's his evil. He's going to go into Ervas Haaretz in Mitzrayim. And who preceded him there? Osnas. Osnas is already there, the daughter of Dinah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, here there was a war in Shamayim. There was a tremendous din. Yaakov Avinu was supposed to go down bound in chains, metal chains. Do you think why the Torah has to give us details? Why do I care if they're made of silk or if they're made of metal? Does it make any difference? Or maybe more weight on Yaakov Avinu, maybe. There's much more depth into this. So Yaakov Avinu is supposed to take this. Yosef as-Tzaddik, is going to come across as absolutely not. Eile toldos Yaakov, Yosef. Midrash said, in the 17 years that Yosef was in the house of his father, he told him everything he had learned in Shem ve'Ever, right? How do Chazal know that? For sure. I'm sure Chazal have a nevuah, everything. But I think it's much simpler than that. I think they were medagdic exactly like we do. When he became Yosef, in order to take upon him the bris, bimekayim the bris bein abesarim, he had to be a figure already. He called Shem ever. Yosef at that time knew everything Yaakov Avinu knew. He was 17 years old. On one hand, Laban is coming to make a plan to have the Bnei Yisrael remaining inside Mitzrayim, in the Galuyos, that Esav should be shoylet on them, at the same time with the same words, with the same plan that Laban HaKadosh Baruch Hu turn it around. You have 5 Geulos, keneged the 5 Galuyos. The Galia Raza we see goes along and say it's parallel to what we just explained, but maybe there is a bridge we can create and explain that too, because really it's mind-boggling what he's going to say. He say that HaKadosh Baruch Hu promised Avram that through the Mechiras Yosef, it's going to be a tremendous refuah. What tremendous refuah? All we see that Mechiras Yosef is going to cost us 10 Harugei Malchus, whether we say they died or they didn't die. And you know what I'm holding on this? That the Asara Harugei Malchus never died, the same way that Yitzchak Avinu was replaced by the ram, each one of them was replaced and they didn't die. As testify himself, Rabbi Shmuel Kohen Gadol, which was the second one that was supposed to be put to death. But he still wrote Pirkei Hechalos, and he says it. So obviously we have a testimony that it did not happen. But since HaKadosh Baruch Hu was able to change the outcome of a Mechiras Yosef, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's not like us, that sometimes we do a job 80%, 70%, 90, 99. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is always 100%. Why this pain of Yosef? Why this pain of Yaakov Avinu? Didn't he suffer enough, Yaakov Avinu? really you had to add him even more. What did he do that he deserved such a... He did nothing. Says the Galia Raza. Had the brother not sell him, and please digest what I'm going to say here, because I told you many times this side in a different version, and it's always the same. Had the brother not sell him to the Mitzrim, the Bnei Yisrael would have never been freed from Mitzrayim. What a statement. But because they owned him like a eved, like a slave, he was their slave, a slave to the Kedusha. When they handed him out to the Ishmaelim, he was never theirs. He always remained attached to the Kedusha. And therefore, Yosef is supposed to become a king in Mitzrayim. Yes, he would have become the king of Mitzrayim, but still cannot get out of there. If you know how my mouth pains me right now, not to tell you, bring Moshe right here and explain you an angle, but we'll be here by next Wednesday speaking about Yosef on here. It's just, my mouth pains me right now. So I couldn't digest this. I said, that far, I cannot go. And I started looking into the Zohar on the Parashat, and I go and I found that the words of the Galia Raza, his Mekoyer, his source, is the Zohar. I couldn't believe it. The Zohar is asking that Yaakov sent his son to see his brothers, but didn't he know Yaakov Avinu, they hated him? How can he endanger his son? The Zohar answers, he knew, but he knew they were tzaddikim. And therefore, he never suspected that they could harm him. I don't get it. They are tzaddikim, and they behave the way they behave. Is that the way of tzaddikim to behave now? Says the Zohar HaKadosh. All this is a plan from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so be accomplished the gzera of the bris base bein habesarim. Otherwise, there would be no oynesh to the Bnei Yisrael for the neshamas and to be able to come back in Gilgul. The first one who created that circle is Yosef. And says the Zohar, therefore, they had to first own Yosef and then let him go down to Mitzrayim. Because once he was owned by them, the other side can never own him again. And because of this, because of the Maisa of the brothers, there is a Yetzias Mitzrayim. Honestly, I've seen some hard Zohar. That's something very hard. How is it possible that from an act of cruelty, the way we described it before, at the end of the day, it's a tremendous chesed for the future generations of Am Yisrael. From a chet that we're going to pay through ages, no. It was the will of Hashem, so we've taken through that, we are taking the anguish. We have to get in a little bit in order to try to understand that problem. So let's go. Not going to be much longer. So let's go quickly. What is it? I'm probably not going to, or maybe I will have a bit of time to go above here, explain you the whole myself Reuven also. It goes along. I didn't explain that pasuk. I was supposed to explain it along, but we don't have to. We know that it's a war between, in that world, between the Kedusha and the tomb. In the Yesod, we are Eitz Hadas, Toiv, Vara, the good and the bad. It's like a scale. You have the good on the right, you have the bad on the left. And this is how this whole world is working. The stick of the scale in the middle, and then you have two balances, holding on each side. And depending what you put on each side, one is going to be heavier than the other and beat the other. Where is Toiv? Who's called Toiv? The Yesod. Who's called Ra? The Yesod. Vayhi becho Yehuda Ra be'enei Hashem. When we call Ra in the Torah, it's always a pgam in the Yesod. So nu, Yaakov Avinu. Because last week we explained Yaakov Avinu was very scared about the last generation. Why? We'll see now. Everything will become very clear. Esav equals 376. Equals Shalem. The midah of the Yesod. Esav has the power to entice people to be chote with the Yesod. And the Malach of Esav touched him Kaf Yerech Yaakov. And that was a preclude for Yaakov Avinu. Kaf Yerech Yaakov equals 512. Equal Esav in full. Ayin, Shin, Vav. Where is the Yerech? The Yerech is by the Yesod. In other words, Yaakov got a message. You won't be able to. You, a tzaddik. Yosef, a tzaddik. Binyamin, a tzaddik. But generations after, we'll get them. And Yaakov wanted to do something here. Equal with the Koilo Midas Hadin. I think he has no yud. 444, 444, yeah, without the yud. So Esav could wake up the Midas Hadid through this anytime. The proof is, what word this pasuk tells us to that he started limping? It says, like in Rosh Hashanah, Vateka Kaf Yerech Yaakov, right? How much is Vateka? 576. How much is what is 576? Malchus. You remember the Ariya Kodesh? On the Mishnah in Nikutei Ashas, on the Mishnah in Makkos, Chav Gimel Amud Aleph, I wrote it many times, that If someone was to be put to death, and by mistake the Sanhedrin lashed him, the Mishnah said he's patur from the din, you can't kill him anymore. That's it. Why? Because there's only 576 dinim in all the entire world. And that's what it tells you. I mean, for you to understand what is this, we're almost there in Deutsches Chaim. You have 288 nitzoitzes that fell, right? On the male side, and 288 on the females, in the clippers. 288, 288 equal 576. So you know where the dinim are. So they're fighting to keep the nitzoitzes. And that's why this is when they wake up the Midas Hadin. And Yaakov Avinu told HaKadosh Baruch Hu in his tefillah, Hatzileni na miyad achi. Miyad first, achi. Because Esau has a tremendous koyach, being Hamish and everything, like Chochmah 73, but it's not Chochmah, I want to say here, Yom Tov. It's going to make Yom Tov Israel. I'm your friend, defending you, sending you weapons. I'm this for you. You come talk to the Congress. You come to the Senate. You invited. Miyad Achi. We make Yom Tov. We have, America has our back. We have nothing to worry. Oh, no. That's when Yaakov Avinu was worried. Because when he shows his face like the Nazis, that's Miyad, the tremendous Achzarias. This is Miyad Esau, which equals 430, which equals 5 times Elohim. Exactly the number of years we will be in Mitzrayim. But this we know how to deal with, because we know on the other side, we need to have 5 times Yud Kevavke to temper the dinim. But when we lose it, us Bnei Israel, is when we have Miyad Achi. Right away, we're so happy that... and what is Yaakov saying right away? Ki yarei anoichi oiso. It's written like this. Equals, again, 729. Equals cross up. Because there's only one way out. Sorry, I forgot a word here. Ki yarei anoichi oiso. Because when it's like this, there's only one way out of the deep hole. And it's with cross up. There's no other way out of there. That's why when he saw the Yaakov Avinu, he sent I don't have to go there. I just want to finish the point to show that it's we said Yaakov Avinu had to be sent to Mitzrayim with Shalshelois Shel Barzel. With chains of metal. It's very interesting because the Ari HaKadosh says Shalshelois Shel Barzel. He says this is the about a different subject, but why here? Because obviously I don't know, I didn't think of it, but you can think food for thought. Barzel, Beis Bilha, Resh, Rachel, Zayin, Zilpa, Leah. A maid with her master. Maid with master. If you take, and now you're going to understand, it's going to start becoming even more clear. The word shalshelois equals 1067. Equals exactly Ishmael, Esav, Amalek. Didn't mean that he had to do, they had to take him the same way Yosef had to be taken down to Mitzrayim, he had to be taken. How? Now, if you take it all together and see that it's an allegory here, it doesn't mean literally, but this is what it means literally. This equals 1306 equals Ruach Zenunim Ruach Shtus. In other words, what Yosef went through and the test he went through, Yaakov Avinu was supposed to get hurt. This whole Indian to be tested was something that was supposed to be on the shoulders of Yaakov Avinu. But Yosef was such a tzaddik. And when he found out, he started brushing his hair and arranging himself and so forth, because there's a din, the Zohar explained, that someone that looks at himself in the mirror to beautify himself and to please women and so forth, right away the klippos are coming on him. And that's why the brothers, when they saw him doing this, coming tip-top and everything, they thought that he was a remainder of the klipa of Yishmael and Esav. Avram had Yishmael, and we thought we're done with the klipas chamoer. Esav had came from it's the klipas shoyer, and we thought, and Yaakov Shalom, and they said no, they're still, because he's going to bring Yerom from Benevat, and he's truly his father, because he's leading the way to where the to this Yerovam Benevat with his behavior. So they thought, and that's why HaKadosh Baruch Hu tricked them to think that Yosef, because he was beautifying himself, but Yosef, the koyach he had, he never spoke. He was doing everything beseser in order to save his father from this shame. And to be honest, only Yosef was able to pass that test. That's why that when he was not sure of the cheshbon, if he was permitted or not, his father appeared in the room. Eile told us Yaakov, Yosef, whatever happened to Yaakov, whatever he went through, the Midrash says Yosef went through. But it works on the other side too. Whatever Yosef went through, Yaakov went through. And that's the inyan of Mechiras Yosef, that to happen like this, to save Yaakov Avinu from a bizayon, to take the Avos HaKadoshim and lower them there. Not possible. There was a tzaddik that stood his ground, which merits stands till end of time. It's Yosef HaTzadik. Vayikach Daria Kodesh says, Vayikach Moshe Satzmois Yosef Imoi. He took the bones. No, he says, don't read Atzmois. Atzmus Yosef. He was a Gilgul of Yosef also, Moshe Rabbeinu. Look how far the Maaseh of Yosef and his shtickle went. We received even the Torah. We obviously, if I start counting here, I'm telling you, we'll be here till next week. But this is the side of Mechiras Yosef. It's the cornerstone, first cornerstone, the building of Bnei Israel. Baruch Adonai le'olam, amen ve'amen.